And we see it in computers as well, right? When we say that the system got corrupted, it's because some errors are there, and it's not allowing that system or that computer system to function to its full potential, to the way it was created. Okay. Why is this so important to us? This is important to us because in the beginning, God created man and woman, and He created them in the image of Himself. Yes, you can look at Genesis 1, verse 27 28. I'll read. Genesis 1, verses 27 to 28. It says, "So God created man in His own image. In the image of God, He created him. Male and female, He created them." So He created us in His image. Yes. And the next verse is a command or a mandate that God has given. He says, then God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on the earth." I want you to focus on that word, be fruitful and multiply. So He didn't just make Adam and Eve in His own image. He wanted them to produce after their kind, which will ultimately be after His kind. Okay. At the Garden of Eden, before sin came, there was intimacy, there was fellowship, there was regular communication with the Father. There was a knowing of the Father. Yes. But what happened was, when sin came in, that changed. The image of God that Adam and Eve had got corrupted because of sin. Okay? Because of sin. And it got altered. I told you the meaning of corruption in the beginning, that when something that was created originally got altered, something gets altered, gets changed, that is when corruption gets in. So that was what happened at the Garden of Eden when man sinned. Corruption got in. Okay? See, from the verses that I read, it is very clear that it is God's desire that we be like Him. Yes, it is God's desire that we be like Him. I know that this has been preached for so many times. This has been said for so many times, but we have to get that ingrained in us, that we have to be like Him, because that was what He wanted from the very beginning. Okay, so if there is any corruption, He will not tolerate. Okay, if there is any corruption, God will not tolerate that. He cannot work with corruption because He is the holy God, incorruptible God. Okay, so I thought we'll look at a few instances from the Bible on how corruption got in and what was God's response to that. Yes, so the first one is in Genesis 6, verses 11 to 13. We know this story. This is a story about Noah and how God used him to destroy the earth. Okay, so I'll read it to you. Genesis 6, verses 11 to 13. It says, "The earth also was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. So God looked upon the earth, and indeed it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way on the earth. And God said to Noah, The end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them, and behold, I will destroy them with..." If you notice, the word corrupt there has come like 3 times. Yes, so the corruption has come to such a point where God did not want to tolerate it any longer. Yes, the corruption of the earth prompted Him to send a flood, the devastating flood, which even till now people talk about. In fact, I just saw a video of an ark being built in Kentucky, if I'm not mistaken. An ark, it's like a monument now where people can go, like a tourist attraction. Yes, so it's something that we're still talking about. The corruption came to such a point where it became intolerable, and God had to send a flood and destroy the earth and save Noah and his family so that he can continue the generations. Yes. So That was the first example, the first instance, okay, about how corruption got in and what was God's response. Yes. The second one I want to turn to is 1 Samuel chapter 2. 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 12. It says there, now the sons of Eli were corrupt. They did not know the Lord. Now the sons of Eli were Phinehas and Hophni. Do you remember that? They were the priest, and they had a lot of problems. They sinned. They had sexual connections with the women who would come to the temple. They robbed the offerings that were supposed to be given to God, the best. They robbed that temple. Yes, so they really did a horrible thing at that time. Yes, and if you notice in that same verse, it says they did not know the Lord. I want to tell you something from this, that if you do not know the Lord, corruption can get in. It's important to know the Lord. It's not knowing about the Lord. It's knowing the Lord. Knowing the Lord and knowing about the Lord is different. Yes, you remember Rahab. Rahab knew about the God of Israel. She knew about the God of Israel because she heard a lot of things being said about the God of Israel. That is different. This is knowing Him, having a personal relationship with Him, having an intimate relationship with Him. This is knowing Him. Okay. Now, if you look at the sins that they committed in Phinehas and Hophni, that is in verses 17 onwards. It says that, therefore the sin of the young men, who were the young men? Phinehas and Hophni, was very great before the Lord, for men abhorred the offering of the Lord. Okay, and verse 22, it says, now Eli was very old, and he heard everything his sons did to all Israel, and how they lay with the women who assembled at the door of the tabernacle of meeting. Those were the sins that they committed, the sons of Eli. Okay, and just a little bit about this word "know" in that verse 12, the same chapter of verse 12. It says that they did not know the Lord. Now the word "know" over there is the word "yada," and it means to perceive, to understand, to discern, to be acquainted with sexually with a woman, talking about intimacy, to cause to know, to be familiar. So the sons of Eli did not have an intimate relationship with the Lord. They were priests. Don't you think they would have known the laws and the laws of the Lord that was given? Because they were priests, but they did not know the giver of the laws. Yes, it's important that we just don't read the Bible and don't have a head knowledge of it, but we should know the writer of the word. Yes, even as we read the word day by day, we should personalize it, and we should allow His voice to speak to us through the word. Yes, okay. So one of the things that we can conclude from here is, if you do not know the Lord, corruption will get in. Okay. Now you have to remember that these are people who knew about the laws I just told you. Yes. It's not the unbelievers that they're talking about. It's not about people who didn't know the law. It's the people who knew the law, which is why we have to take heed to this. Yes, because sometimes, like, we have moved into this season, we have heard a lot of word being preached. It's very easy for us to just, spout out scriptures. Yes, it's so easy for us to have a head knowledge of the word, but it's important for us to have intimacy with the Father. Now, this has been said for so long, and it will keep coming. You know why? Because that is the most important thing for the Father and the Son to be built. Intimacy. Yes? Okay? And it takes knowing His heart, knowing His mind, and carrying it forth as a son. When you know the heart of the Father, when you know the heart of the heartbeat, what excites Him, what gets Him, happy or pleased, you will be able to carry it forth as a son and do his will. Yes. Now, if you look at, I want you to turn to 2 Corinthians 5. 2 Corinthians 5. 2 Corinthians 5, verse 21. It says there, 2 Corinthians 5, verse 21, it says, "For he made him who knew no sin to be sin for us, that we might become the righteousness of God in him." Who is it talking about? Jesus. He became sin, but he did not know sin. Now, if you look at that word know over there, it's the same meaning as the word yada that we just saw. Intimacy, I told you about, no? To be acquainted with, to be familiar with. It's the same meaning. Okay? It's same meaning, but a different word. Okay? Now, if you look at Jesus, he became sin, but he did not know sin. He was not intimate with sin. He was intimate with the Father. But if you look at the sons of Eli, they were intimate with sin, but not intimate with God. Yes? Yes, so we should look at our pattern son, the example of the pattern son. He did not know sin. He became sin, but he did not know sin. He was intimate with the Father. He was not intimate with sin. Yes? Another reason why Phineas and Hophni also got corrupted was also the lack of restraint and correction by the father. If you look at 1 Samuel chapter 3, 1 Samuel chapter 3, verses 11 to 13, it says there, "Then the Lord said to Samuel, Behold, I will do something in Israel at which both ears of everyone who hears it will tingle. In that day I will perform against Eli all that I have spoken concerning his house from beginning to end. For I have told him that I will judge his house forever for the iniquity which he knows, because his sons made themselves vile, and he did not restrain them." See, when correction comes from the Father, it is to keep us from corruption. It is to keep us from corruption. And we should, I know it's not pleasant, but we should be thankful about that. Yes? And the correction from the Father will set me on the right track. It will set me on the right way so I can follow God and I can have his image and likeness the way it was designed to be, the way he planned it to be from the very beginning. Yes? If you look at Psalms 141, there's a beautiful psalm over there, 141. Psalms 141, verses 4 and 5, it says, "Do not incline my heart to any evil thing, to practice wicked works with men who work iniquity, and do not let me eat of their delicacies. Let the righteous strike me, it shall be a kindness, and let him rebuke me, it shall be as excellent oil. Let my head not refuse it, for still my prayer is against the deeds of the wicked." Talking about the correction from the Father again. It says, "Let the righteous strike me." Let the righteous strike me, it says there. I would like to take that as the Father correcting us. Yes? When we want excellent oil to come in, to flow in, allow the correction of the Father. Yes? Are you with me? Yes? Okay. So that is the second example that we saw. The third example is in Exodus 32. Exodus 32 verse 7. This is the incident when Moses went up to the mountain and the children of Israel had got the molten calf being fashioned. You remember that incident? Yes. In verse 7, I will not get into the whole detail of that incident, but we'll look at one verse here. Verse 7, it says, "And the Lord said to Moses, Go get down, for your people whom you brought out of the land of Egypt have corrupted themselves." It says, The people whom you have brought out of the land of Egypt have corrupted themselves. They gave into idolatry, and that was a corruption. Yes, corruption got in. And if you look at verse 25, the same chapter, verse 25, now Moses had gone to the mountain, and when he came back, this is what Aaron was talking to him. Said, I don't know these people, I didn't do that. The calf just came. It just came. Yes. And now this is what the father saw. Who's the father here? Moses. Okay, this is what he saw. Now when Moses saw that the people were unrestrained, for Aaron had not restrained them, to their shame among their enemies. Who was responsible to be there down with the people? Aaron. He was supposed to be the father figure there, down, when Moses was up, right? Representing Moses. He was supposed to be there and restraining the people, but he did not restrain. He also allowed them to be corrupted. If you look at the sons of Eli and the children of Israel, yes, it's almost the same instance, right? Eli did not restrain his sons. Aaron did not restrain the children of Israel. So both the parties got into corruption. Yes, lack of restraint again. And as a consequence of that, if you look at verse 35 of the same chapter, it says, so the Lord plagued the people because of what they did with the calf which Aaron made. He plagued the people. He plagued the people because of the consequence of their corruption. Okay. And if you look at Psalms 103 verse 7, it says that the children of Israel knew about the acts of God, but they did not know the ways of God. Only Moses knew his ways. So that is also a lack of intimacy between them and God. They knew about God. Remember, I told you in the beginning, we should not just know about God, we should know God intimately. See, in knowing this infinite being, there is no saturation level, because he is so big. There's only a little bit of himself that he's revealed to us. Yes, and it's a constant knowing. It goes from one level to another. Would you agree that we have crossed from levels to levels in our walk? Yes, because from the time we got born again, we know a little bit more now than we knew before. Yes, okay. So it goes from one level to another. We cannot afford to reach saturation level. If you say, this is it, I'm done, I know God, that's it, we're in trouble. That is a saturation level there, and we cannot put that saturation level in terms of knowing the almighty, infinite being. Yes? Okay? So if you look at all these examples that we just saw, you will see that the Lord kills or destroys anything that is corrupt. He will not tolerate corruption. Simple. Yes? All the instances. He destroyed the people with a flood. He killed Phineas and Hophni. If you look at 1 Samuel chapter 2 verse 25, it says that it was the Lord's desire to kill Phineas and Hophni. Scary, isn't it? Yes? It was the Lord's desire to kill Phineas and Hophni. What made him to do that? Because of their corruption. And if you look at the children of Israel, he plagued them. Many people died after that. Yes? So how does that apply to us? Let us look at Galatians 6. Galatians 6, verses 7 and 8. It says there, Galatians 6, verse 7 and 8, it says there, do not be deceived, God is not mocked, for whatever a man sows, that he will also reap. For he who sows to his flesh will of the flesh reap corruption, but he who sows to the Spirit will of the Spirit reap everlasting life. So if you look at those two verses, you will notice that there are two fields there. One is the flesh and one is the Spirit. If you sow to the flesh, you will reap corruption. If you sow to the spirit, you will reap everlasting life. Yes. So the onus is on us. And if you look at it, we have to always be mindful whether we are sowing to the flesh or sowing to the spirit. Yes. The word corruption over there also means ruin, destroy, or perish. See, corruption and incorruption cannot coexist together. It will either be one or the other. It happens with us, right? If we're acting in the flesh, we're just acting in the flesh. If we're acting in the spirit, we're acting in the spirit. Simple. We cannot have a mixture of both. Yes? Yes? Okay. So based on the outcome, we have to choose whether we want life or we want death. Because corruption will always produce death. There is nothing good in corruption. Yes? If you look at Romans 7 verse 18, Romans 7 verse 18, that is Paul talking. He says, for I know that in me, that is in my flesh, he specifies it. I know that in me, that is in my flesh. Okay? Nothing good dwells, nothing good dwells. Yes. So anything that is of the flesh is no productivity when it comes to being with God, I'm talking about. Yes? And whatever is of the flesh will only produce death. Yes? See, this letter was preached to the Galatians. Okay? It was preached to the believers in Galatia, not unbelievers. Yes? It was preached to the believers, not the unbelievers. To somebody who already have the knowledge of God somewhere, whom the gospel has already been preached. Yes? Okay. So it is a warning for us as well. Yes? Having known the word, having walked with the Lord for so long, as I said, the flesh is something that we have to defeat on a regular basis. We cannot, sit back one day and say we have defeated. If you look at the example of David, he still had giants coming, even after he killed Goliath. Yes? So it's something that we have to be mindful. We have to keep ourselves guarded. Yes? And also remember that it will not produce anything. It will produce only death. Yes? But thank God there is grace. Thank God that he gives us the grace to overcome the flesh. Because his work, his interest is only in doing one thing with us, in forming our character to be like him. Okay? If you look at 1 Peter chapter 1, 1 Peter chapter 1, 1 Peter chapter 1 verses 18 onwards, it says, knowing that you were not redeemed with corruptible things like silver or gold from your aimless conduct received by tradition from your fathers, but with the precious blood of Christ, as of a lamb without blemish and without spot. We were not redeemed with materialistic things like silver or gold or anything. Our born again experience was not something that we paid money and we got. It was redeemed. We were redeemed by the precious blood of the Lamb. Yes, which is much, 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 much more precious than anything else. Yes, gold and silver cannot compare to that. Yes, okay. Thank God for that. He redeemed us from that corruption that happened at the Garden of Eden. Yes, whatever corruption that happened at the Garden of Eden, we have been redeemed from that. Yes, and if you look at verses 22 onwards to 23, it says, since you have purified your souls in obeying the truth through the Spirit in sincere love of the brethren, love one another fervently with a pure heart, having been born again, not of corruptible seed, but incorruptible, through the word of God which lives and abides forever. We got born again by the incorruptible word of God. Who is the incorruptible word? Christ, because in the beginning there was the Word, and the Word was with God. Yes, we were born again of Christ. Yes, and the Word that is incorruptible. The Word of God, the word says that if you look at Proverbs 30 verse 5 and yes, Proverbs 30 verse 5. 30 verse 5, it says, every word of God is pure. He is a shield to those who put their trust in him. Every word of God is pure. There is not even a bit of corruption in it. Yes, we were redeemed by that word, the pure word of God. Yes, God is interested in his incorruptible word. Yes, which is why if you look at Jesus also, when he was on earth, he would not let anything but the incorruptible word of God to be spoken. He would speak only the incorruptible word of God. And as his sons, that is the responsibility that we have to take. Speak only the incorruptible word of God, which is why we have to keep our mouth. Yes, Ephesians 4:29. If you look at Ephesians 4:29, it says, let no corrupt word proceed out of your mouth, but what is good for necessary edification, that it may impart grace to the hearers. Let no corrupt word proceed out of your mouth. The word corrupt over there is the word sapros in Greek, which means rotten, worthless, bad, corrupt. Yes, which is why as his sons we have to be very, very careful. What are we speaking? And what we speak is nothing but an outflow of the heart. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. What are we feeding ourselves? Are we feeding the word of God? Are we feeding junk? Yes, because that is the input. Whatever is the input, the output will flow through our mouth. Yes, okay. And we need to allow the pure language of the word to come out. See, do you agree that we all are grace carriers here as his sons? Are we all grace carriers? Yes, we are all grace carriers. He wants to release something to people around us, through us, because we are grace carriers. And if our mouth and our hearts are not in line, it becomes, what do I say? It becomes useless. He cannot release what he wants to release through us to people around us. And what does he want? What does he want us to release? He wants us to release words that carry truth, wisdom, purity. Yes, all of that to people around us. All of us are working. All of us are. We do have interaction with people around us. Yes. Sometimes have you ever come across people who come to you and say, "I feel very good talking to you. I feel very nice talking to you." They're seeing the grace in you. Yes, but if our mouth starts spouting out things that are rotten, that are bad, nobody wants to get close. The same with fruits, right? If we see a rotten apple or a rotten fruit, we will take that rotten fruit out because we don't want to mix with the good ones. Yes, the same with us. Nobody wants to be near a rotten fruit. Yes. Why is this so important to us, talking about corruption? It is important. It is important because God is interested in our image. God is interested in forming us. The last week we had the talk about formation process. What is that all about? What is that all about, the formation process? The formation process is all about getting us to be in the image of Christ. Who did he call from heaven and said, "This is my beloved Son in whom I am well pleased"? Jesus. He called Jesus. So, "This is my beloved Son in whom I am well pleased." Yes? Don't we like it if that voice from heaven come for us? Yes? Yes? which is why all of this, like the removing of the corruption from us, because our hearts are deceitful. It can get to extents where we can't even imagine sometimes. Sometimes we'll utter something and say, I said this? How is it possible? Because there are areas in our hearts that are deceitful, that we have to keep monitoring on a regular basis. And that is what the Father wants to uproot from us, that corruption. Yes, because He wants us to be in the image of Himself, His Father. Yes? See, we are not called to be above Him. We are called to be just like Him. Lucifer's problem was that he wanted to be above God. If you look at Isaiah 14, verse 12 and 14, he says that I want to go above the heavens. Yes? Yes, if you look, the essence of those two verses is that he wants to be above God. And corruption got him. You see? Yes? So we should aspire to be like the Father, but not above the Father. Yes? Jesus, on the other hand, he never, though he was God, and he walked on earth as a man and God, he never ever proclaimed that he was greater than God, his Father. In fact, if you look at John 12, verse 49, John 12, verse 49, he says, For I have not spoken on my own authority, but the Father who sent me gave me a command what I should say and what I should speak. Could he have spoken? He was the Word himself, imagine. Yes? But he said, I will speak only what has been authorized by the Father for me to speak. The same way with us, his sons. Yes? Releasing only that word that has been authorized by the Father. Okay? So, may we have the grace to yield, to submit to his word, even as he is doing the refining process in us, getting the corruption out, getting us to be conformed after the image of his Son. May we have the grace to be able to receive and not resist. Because there is this battle between the flesh and the spirit, right? Paul says that what I don't want to do, I'm doing. But what I should be doing, I'm not doing. There is always this battle. Sometimes you get frustrated, sometimes you get upset. But may we have the grace. May we have the grace. And God is interested in forming our character. He is interested in making us his sons. Yes, because he wants to see himself in us. Yeah? May God bless this word. Amen.